some last minute copies of agendas.
Okay.
Yeah. How you doing?
At least now it's.
Except when I get this kind of stuff pile on me, the last minute.
Bring back memories. I didn't say good memories.
There's another.
All right, we're just waiting for a minute for some more agendas and then we will get underway. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, so we're just about ready to get started, okay?
Okay, great. Good to see everybody.
Good to see you too. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Underway. All right. Thank you very much. I would like to call to order the Salem-Keizer Area Transportation Study. It is Tuesday, January 28th, 2025, and we'll go around the room for introductions. Let's start with Steve.
I'm Steve Dobernich. I'm a transportation planner for SKATS and the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments.
I'm Mike Jaffe. I'm the Transportation Planning Director for the Council of Governments and also with SKATS.
I'm Kim Sapinar, Senior Transportation Planner here at the Council of Governments.
Ray Jackson, Senior Transportation Planner at the COG and for the SKATS.
We'll go to Desiree real quick and then we'll go to
Hi, Desiree Coleman, SKATS.
So I'm Kathy Clark, Mayor of City of Keizer and current chair.
Polk County Commissioner, SKATS, and sitting in for a lot of more boards.
Anna Henson, ODOT.
Shop for Mayor Turner.
Kevin Cameron, Marion County Commissioner.
Kyle Duran, Keizer City Councilor.
Tammy Kunz, Keizer Community Diverse Engagement.
Jacqueline Green, Northeast Neighborhood Association.
And then on screen, Paul, welcome aboard.
Thanks, everybody. Good afternoon, Paul Teigen. I'm a recently elected City of Salem councilor for Ward 1. So that's downtown and the close-in neighborhoods around downtown. 4-year term, so I'll be on the council between now and the end of 2028.
All right, fantastic. Welcome. Maria.
Good afternoon, everyone. Maria Hinojos Presi, Board Director at the Salem-Keizer Public Schools.
Sadie.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sadie Carney, Chariot's board member for Sub-District 3. Sorry to be off camera right now. I should be appearing on camera soon. I'm just home from the pharmacy with some medicine for sick kids and preventing you all from contracting whatever we have. So sorry not to be there in person as well.
I'm not apologizing for not having my camera. I'm having a bad hair day.
Well, glad you guys are on. Brandon.
Hi, everyone. Brandon Williams. I'm the Area 3 Regional Planner for ODOT. Covers Marion, Polk, and Yamhill counties, and I'm a TAC member on SKATS.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. And it's a pleasure to welcome to SKATS Mayor Mike Schaffler and Councilor Paul Teigen. Is it Teigen or Teigen?
Thank you. It's Teigen.
Teigen. All right. Councilor Teigen and Councilor Kyle Duran, who in a few minutes will be swapping places with me as Keizer's representative to SKATS, and I will be his alternate. So first we're going to go to yes.
Councilor Teigen is the alternate.
Okay.
Vicky Varney will be the regular SKATS. Salem representative to SKATS.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for clarifying that.
Oh, good to know. Okay, so we got both of you. Fantastic. Very good. All right, with that, again, welcome to Mayor Schaffler, and I'd have Councilor Varney and Councilor Teigen and Councilor Durant who are going forward. First order of business is to approve the minutes from the Policy Committee meeting on November 26, 2024 and January 13, 2025. Were there any additions or corrections to note? Hearing none, motion to approve.
So moved, Cameron.
Second. Moved by Commissioner Cameron, seconded by Anna Henson to approve both of those sets of minutes. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, signify by saying no. Hearing no objection, motion passes unanimously. The time is now provided for public comment for members. Yes, Commissioner.
Madam Chair, before we do that, based on the emergency meeting that we approved, that was about the ODOT installation of electric chargers. Has the executive orders that were signed last week, has that changed that flow of money? Does anybody know how it has impacted that order and what we need, any action we need to take?
I don't think any action that we need to take right now, but the project manager with City of Tualatin reached out and was grateful that we moved ahead and expedited the approval, but he said it's currently on pause until they learn more. So they're working with FHW to see what the next steps are.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You bet. Thank you very much. I'll also want to note for the record that Councillor Della Cini has joined us, Councillor from the city of Almsville. Good to see you, Della. Okay, public comment. The time is provided for members of the public to address the policy committee. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the committee today? Right, seeing none. I will now go to the election of chair and vice chair for 2025. This was done at the beginning of each calendar year. And just as a preamble, it has been a true pleasure to serve on SKATS for the last 18 years and the last 12 as your chair. So I will now be an alternate for SKATS and not eligible to serve as chair. But I want to thank you all for the opportunity to serve in this capacity and to work with a tremendous group of people who are working for the betterment of our entire region. And it is a pleasure to be able to introduce Kyle Duran, who will be the lead for Keizer. And I will be his alternate to help support him as he ramps up in this work. So with that, thank you all very much. I really appreciate it. And a real pleasure. We need nominations for chair.
I would like to nominate Sadie Carney for chair.
Marnie's been nominated.
Are you going to be the representative on this board, Lyle?
Yeah, Commissioner.
Essentially, I'm an alternate.
I'd like to nominate Lyle Morehorse.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, we have two nominations for chair. That would be Sadie Carney and Lyle Morehorse. What we can do is have people write on a slip of paper your name and then your choice, and then turn that into Mike, and then he'll read those into the record. Okay, so can we get some?
For the people online, would they send a message to Desiree?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, private message.
So if you want to put it in the chat and direct it to Desiree where nobody else will see it.
Yeah.
Desiree or Mike, maybe. Yeah.
We're on Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Say, do private.
Message,
yeah.
Or send it to Mike, because otherwise it'll pop up on the shared screen.
Okay,
Yeah.
send it to Mike. Okay, so for those on the screen, please send your vote to Mike. Kyle, you're gonna vote for us.
Yeah, maybe just.
Are we doing that through email or over in the chat, like sending to a specific participant? Okay.
I'm just trying to be conservative. I spent lots of years in.
Down to Kyle.
In the chat.
Yeah, and I see a couple from them, so.
Okay.
And of course, it's voting members on the current policy committee.
So you need our name.
Your name and then who you're voting for.
Yeah.
We can't, secret ballots are not permitted in public process. Oh, by the way. I was paying attention during the government ethics training.
So.
So if you are ready. You got them, there's some extra. Mike?
Madam Chair, did you clarify alternates cannot vote?
Emily, well, no, an alternate can if the primary is not here. So
Okay.
Paul can vote, Craig can vote
Okay.
because they are the designated alternate and the primary is not here. That's why we have designated alternates, so it's clear who the appointed voting member is, each jurisdiction.
So, Chair, do you want me to read the votes as I?
Please read them into the record, please.
Okay.
Got most of it off, it looks like.
Yeah, it's-
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think he's.
Come on. Make sure they have it.
Yeah, 100%.
Fine.
Salem votes for Sadie Carney.
Still got some on your nose when you get like that.
Keizer votes for Lyle.
Can you mute, please?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keiser's voting for Lyle Mordhorst. Let's see.
You have to.
Marion County is for Lyle Mordhorst. Turner, Lyle Mordhorst. ODOT, Lyle Mordhorst. Polk County, Lyle Mordhorst. School District, Sadie Carney. And Trans District, Sadie Carney. So I have 3 votes for Sadie Carney and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for Lyle Mordhorst.
Okay.
Just double check.
So
5 to 3.
the new chair will be Commissioner Lyle Mordhorst. He is not here, so I will go ahead and conduct the vote for vice chair. And then upon conclusion of that, we will then, if the vice chair is present, which hopefully that person is, they will be able to take over the gavel. The floor is now open for vice chair nominations.
I'll nominate Sadie Carney for vice chair.
Okay. Director Sadie Carney, any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, there are no other nominations for vice chair. So,
Let's see if there's more than one nomination. Let's see if there's more than. Was it just one nomination?
I got just one. There was no other nominations for vice chair. So,
Move for unanimous consent.
motion for unanimous consent by Commissioner Pope and Henson second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
By saying no. All right, Sadie, you are vice chair, and as such, the gavel is now yours.
Wow. This early afternoon has taken some crazy twists and turns. Here, Clark, I don't know what this committee will be and could be without your steady hand at the wheel. You have provided such incredible, steadfast leadership and understanding on all of this that I think if the rest of the committee members who have shared in this experience with me are feeling the same things, it's sort of like, wow, I feel like we have a lot to learn and a lot to live up to. And I just appreciate the leadership and legacy you have left here. I mean, it's really just been like an enduring act of service and truly of love for our communities. So thank you so much for the time and dedication you have given to this.
Oh.
And Chair Carney, I want to interrupt just for a minute. So, Kathy Clark, we got you a gift. Appreciate all the years.
They're beautiful.
And on
Beautiful.
Oh.
15 years, and there's a card that you might want to read. In the group.
Gathered with great appreciation for the many years as the SKATS PC and as chair, 2009 to 24. I don't know, I can pronounce that, it's in Klingon. Over for translation. Live long and prosper.
Thank you, Kathy.
Kathy.
Sadie said it very well, and our Vice Chair Carney said it like very eloquently, and I agree wholeheartedly. So I think, there's big shoes to fill. So thanks for your dedication and, it's been great.
Thank you.
And all the staff have appreciated you, over the many, many years you've been on the committee, so, and as chair.
Well, it's really been a pleasure to work with absolutely everybody. The level of commitment from everybody in this community for the betterment of the entire region to make sure that what we get done serves everybody and serves them well with quality and integrity. We couldn't have a better staff. I've worked with all of you plus your predecessors, and that's what happens when you stick around this long. And just seeing that we are really well served here in the Mid-Willamette Valley. We are the second largest metro area in the state. And with the kind of service we have here, we act like it. So go forth and do good. Floor's your
Thank you.
chair.
Yes, thank you. Former Chair Clark. I'm not gonna be used to saying that. Thank you, Kathy. I believe that brings us to agenda item E, amendments to the Salem-Keizer Area Transportation Study Federal Fiscal Year 2024-29 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Plan. And I will turn the presentation over to Steve Drobnick. I should probably Dobrinick. Dobrinick. I'm so sorry, Steve. I've been
No
here
problem.
this long, and that's the first time I think I've been in a position to pronounce your last name. My apologies, Steve Dobrinick.
No worries at all. It's a challenging one. It's intimidating with a lot of consonants, so I can understand. So there's a small change to this agenda item. I'm not going to ask for approval for amendment 25-2 and 25-3. ODOT asked me to hold off on that. And that's just because these two amendments were entered by ODOT staff as duplicates. So they're already sending me administrative amendments that are going to effectively make the same changes, but just a little bit differently so that they avoid the duplication. So it's just going to be amendment 25-4 to review today. And so I have like 2 slides to go over, and then can answer questions. And I think this will be a pretty quick one. So the action requested is to adopt resolution 25-4, amending the 24-29 Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program. And the project this impacts is a City of Salem project. It's the Orchard Heights project from Snowbird to West. And the action today is it's laid out in 3 different stages. I think it's preliminary engineering, right-of-way, and then the construction stage. And the city asked to cancel the right-of-way phase because they're not going to need that. They're not going to need to acquire any right-of-way. And so we're canceling that and just moving those funds to the construction phase. So as far as background on the project, it's a curb, stormwater, sidewalk improvement for one portion. And then it's so there's a enhanced pedestrian crosswing, and then I think, yeah, so that's the project in a nutshell. It's still remains the same total cost, which is $2.3 million. And then I'll flip over just for a look at where the project's located. In West Salem, and I'm zooming in on it. There's 2 sections here. This is Snowbird here, so there's a small section here where work's being done, and then another section from Haven to Chapman Drive here along Park. that's all I have, for the amendment request, and, if anyone's ready to make a motion to adopt resolution 25-4, then we can make that change to the tip.
Madam Chair, I will move the amendment 25-2.
No, we're asking. for
25-4.
We're dropping 25-2 and 3.
Oh, excuse me, 25-4, sorry. Cancel the writing of it.
Salem seconds.
Any discussion? I do have maybe just a clarifying question, Steve, and that is, what does it mean to cancel the right-of-way phase?
Yeah, so, maybe if I show in the packet, that might help. Give me one moment and I'll pull that page up. But essentially, when a project is, entered into the SKIP, it's, there's, I think, up to 6 different project phases that are included. So it just breaks down, of the total that's gonna be on the project, it breaks it down by things like, planning, preliminary engineering, right of way, utility relocation. So if I flip down to the correct project, here it is. You'll see this is the current programming of the project. So you have a preliminary engineering stage, a right of way stage that I mentioned, and then construction. So this $135,000 for right of way is just going to effectively be moved into the total for construction. And that's captured here on the next page of the attachment. So I still show the PE stage, and then I show the construction stage, which increased by that $135,000.
Could you give me an example of what type of investments we might make in the right-of-way phase?
That's typically for purchase of property. So
Okay.
I'm guessing when the city was initially scoping the project, there's some sidewalk involved, there's some sewer work. They were budgeting for, we might have to purchase a couple feet of property from some of the homeowners along the project extent. And then that just wasn't the case. So that's why.
Okay. That was my hunch. I just wanted to make sure I was clear in my understanding. Okay, is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of adopting resolution 25-4, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. All right, passes unanimously. Thank you, Steve. And let's see, our next agenda item F is to finalize the discretionary funding evaluation criteria and weighting factors for project selection in the TIP. And I believe I'm sending it back to you, Steve.
Yep, that's right. Thank you. So let me just, I'll share my screen again, here in a moment. There we go. This is gonna be a little bit longer of a presentation. And especially new members, feel free to stop me if you have questions. This is gonna look familiar, I think, to a lot of folks because we discussed this in November as well. But essentially what we're presenting today is the evaluation criteria for our that we basically use for reviewing project applications when we fund new projects in the upcoming 2732 TIP. So we've broken the action into 2 parts. The first is to approve the evaluation criteria language. And then the second part is to discuss the weighting factors that are layered in on the technical score part. So I'll just start with kind of an overview of the scoring process and how it fits in. And then I'll talk about some of the changes in our TAC recommendation, and then we could go to discussion from there. So just the basics, the bare basics are that voting members of the TAC are asked to evaluate applications when they come in, and our deadline for applications is February 25th of this year. So they use an established evaluation criteria that's developed by SKATS to meet federal requirements. Last time we updated these was in January of 2022. And the purpose there was to fit in line a little bit more with FHWA guidelines, to fit in with federal performance targets, and then make sure that they're in alignment with our long-range metropolitan transportation project evaluation process. So, like I mentioned in November, the TAC and this group reviewed the proposed feedback on the draft versions and of the evaluation criteria, and gave some input on what they'd like to see with the criteria. So following up on this, we did, so we had that initial discussion back in November, and I think folks will remember the overview and some of the discussion points there. But following this, staff did a public outreach survey. It was a short, I think, 4-question survey just to get input from some members of the public about the evaluation criteria and how that might shape project selection. So we reviewed those survey results with the TAC in December. Since we didn't have a December policy committee meeting, we haven't shared those results with this group, but they are in the packet and part of the later in the presentation. I'll just give some high-level highlights from the survey feedback. So based on those results and the previous discussions at the January TAC meeting, we presented a proposal for the evaluation criteria. And essentially what the TAC recommended was that the policy committee, this group, approve the language in the evaluation criteria as it's written out in Appendix A and B. And then for the weighting criteria, they didn't make a recommendation, but they suggested we present them options and then get some additional input from this group to ultimately make the decision on the weighting factors. Any questions yet, or anyone want to interrupt me, or should I keep going?
On your survey, what demographic, is that just people respond to the website? That's it? Anybody can respond?
Yes, essentially, we did the main outreach was to our interested parties email list, which I think is close to 400 or 500.
500.
Yeah, emails that we reach, and then I think got a fairly good response rate.
We share it through Facebook. We share it through the city of Salem has a communications team, goes out in their newsletter. We have a newsletter that goes out. So a handful of measures that we can try to spread it. It was an online survey so that people could click through and answer about 5 questions, have a little QR code if that was easier for them. But if not a scientifically abstract.
Yeah.
It was people who, yeah.
In-house, low cost.
Kim, I think you had almost 200 responses, right? Do I remember that from the packet? It was 197 responses,
Yeah,
which I think that's pretty good engagement on something like this. Congratulations.
Okay, so just to continue, a recap of especially for folks who are new, of the application review process. We split our scoring into a technical score and a qualitative score. And those are, the results are added together and gives us an initial project ranking. Based on that ranking, as well as discussions with the TAC and some work that staff does to match projects with federal funded programs, the TAC makes a recommendation for which projects to fund, and then that goes before the policy committee for ultimate approval. And that there's a timeline actually in the memo as well. I'll go over that in a few minutes, but that lays out the sort of next 5 to 6 months that we go through of evaluating the projects and then eventually coming up with a list of projects that we fund. So the scoring gets us towards the projects that the policy committee eventually elects to fund, but it's the policy committee's decision on which projects are ultimately funded as part of the TIP. So the first part, the technical score, this is a 10-part criteria, and this is covered in Appendix A. It measures project benefits based on our goals in our long-range plan, which is the MTIP. The TAC meets as a group and comes up with the score for each of the 10 pieces of the criteria. And so they're scoring project criteria as either a project's either strongly supported, that criteria supports, is sort of no impact, or it's hindering progress on that criteria. After scoring takes place, that's when the weighting factors come in, and that is layered on to come up with the final technical score. So I'll just really quickly switch over. I know we talked about this in November, but I just wanted to make sure I share it on screen again. This is what the criteria looks like in its current form in the matrix for evaluation. So down the side, there's 10 different criteria, and then some short descriptions for what each of these scores would look like. So the 10 pieces of the criteria are addresses safety or security.
And Steve, this is Appendix A in your packet if you want to.
Yep. Yeah, this is the same as the just showed up a little bit on screen to look at it in the Excel format. The second one is addresses traffic bottleneck along a corridor. The third is improves transit operations or access to transit, followed by reduces a gap in the regional system. The fifth piece of criteria is extends the life of the transportation system asset through preservation and maintenance. Sixth is improves the movement of freight. Then is increases access to employment centers and jobs. Reduces greenhouse gas and or carbon monoxide emissions. Benefits low income or minority populations or neighborhoods. And the last one is improves hazard resilience. And there's a little more description about what that means related to seismically vulnerable bridges, flood risk, and ODOT lifeline routes. So this is the language. This is the part that the TAC recommended approval of this language, and felt that this reflected what they would make a recommendation for approval behind. So we'll put a pin in that and talk about the qualitative score for a moment. The purpose of the qualitative score is to evaluate project proposals based on factors that aren't in the technical score. Things like the cost estimate, suitability of the project or proposal as compared to the problem that it's seeking to solve, the importance to the region and to the jurisdiction, and then its readiness to move through the engineering and construction phases. Again, the TAC scores these, and they do this individually, and then we add those scores together and average them into a group score. So we got a recommendation.
Could you go back to that last slide again, Stephen? Just
Sure.
you said something about averaging, and I just want to make sure I'm following this process.
Yeah, so for the qualitative scoring part, in past cycles, the TAC members would come up with their individual assessments of how well the project met the scoring criteria. And then instead of doing a consensus score the way that it's done with the technical criteria, in this case, they were each representative on the TAC gave a score, and then they were averaged. Does that make sense?
It does. And then when we see the TAC member scores, has the policy committee traditionally only seen the average, or do we see both the average and the individual scoring?
Well, the technical one is an individual. It is a group consensus. We'll have a special meeting and as a group, decide how well that a project scores on all those factors. You know, we'll say is it a 1, a 2, a 0. So that will be a group discussion, and then on the qualitative scoring, I think we'll just give you we'll give you the final total, not the individual scores from every jurisdiction.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm tracking. Thank you.
Okay, so the, as part of the, in Appendix B, there's more specifics on the qualitative scoring and what the TAC recommended for approval. The only changes, there were a few changes since what we talked about at the November meeting, so I wanted to highlight those. In this case, we moved forward with the simplified qualitative scoring criteria. If you remember, there was like a 3-part one that was used in the last cycle. We just merged that into a single table to simplify the process essentially. And then we made a couple language changes, swapped out some language about appropriate project scope for suitable, in place of that, we put suitable project scope or solution. And then we deleted one piece of the criteria related to the reasonable use of federal funds. It is probably covered pretty well in the other parts of the criteria, so I'll just flip to the next slide. This is what's exactly in Appendix B. So this is the language overall that the TAC recommended for the qualitative scoring. So at that top end for 20 points, you would be achieving all or close to all those pieces, like it being a suitable project scope and solution, having a realistic schedule and cost, being the jurisdiction's highest priority, regional significance, there's an urgency to solve the problem, there's adequate planning, coordination, and also public support. And then sort of in the tiers below, it would be meeting most of the criteria, meeting some of them, or few to none of them.
Hey, Steve, can I ask a question of you?
Yeah, please.
Sorry, new guy question. I'll try not to pull that card too many times. Could you characterize when you do move forward with these projects, like most of them are in the 20-point range, they're hitting all the marks, or most are between 7 and 13? Like what do you think is the general distribution of scoring of the projects based on this scoring matrix here?
Sure.
I'm gonna let Mike answer because I wasn't here for the last scoring cycle.
Okay.
So this one's gonna be a little new because last time we broke these qualitative scores into 3 different kinds of scores. Each one got like up to 10 and 3 different separate kind of evaluations. And the TACs thought it was too duplicative, be simpler to have this one matrix. So I can't quite answer your question, but this is what the TAC is thinking. It's a cleaner way to go forward. And then maybe one way to answer your question, it depends on the project, I guess, how well it scores, you know, on all these things about jurisdiction's highest priority and urgency to identify a problem. I guess everyone's gonna have kind of their own subjective opinion about those kind of factors.
Okay, thank you. I'll just say that the scoring matrix made intuitive sense to me, and just to preview a question or just put it out on the table, wondering if you did any like back casting to see how projects you've approved in the past would have measured up on this matrix as you were putting it together. If it's not the right time to answer that question, that's fine, but I'll just put it on the table now.
Yeah, because this is so kind of subjective, you know, looking at the whole project and kind of saying how that TAC member is saying to themselves, how well does it meet all these criteria? You know, does it get an A? Does it get an F? Or, I mean, does it get a 0 to a 20? It feels to me like it's an 18 or a 16. So I think it's that kind of a feel to it, counselor, as opposed to more technical about those 10 categories.
Copy. Thanks.
Okay. So now we talked about the criteria piece, both both parts, the technical and the qualitative scoring. The technical score also has the weighting factors. And so that's a part of what goes into the total score is how those weighting factors impact those 10 criteria. So as mentioned, there was a survey administered by staff in late November and early December. We had about 197 respondents submit surveys. Primary outreach was online through the interested parties list, as well as Facebook and some of the other outlets that Kim mentioned. The Appendix D has the full results, so feel free to flip ahead to that on your own, but I'm just going to highlight a few things. Safety was the top priority among the survey responses. And then outside of safety, the criteria that rose to the top most frequently were reduces a gap in a regional system, reduces greenhouse gas or carbon monoxide emissions, and improves transit operations or access to transit. And the way that looked in the questions was that the first question asked, what are your, for survey respondents to answer, what are the top 3 most important parts of the criteria? 48% about of the respondents said addresses safety and security. And then the next 3 most frequently cited were reducing a gap in the system, reducing greenhouse gas or carbon monoxide emissions, and improving the transit operations or access to transit. The second question was just it was focused on safety specifically. It said in the last cycle, safety received additional weighting compared to other criteria. Do you agree or disagree that we should do that again? And 77% of the respondents said safety should continue to be the top weighted criterion. Question 3 asked kind of very similar to question 1, but asked a little bit differently. It just asked if any of the other criteria besides safety would receive additional weighting factors. So reducing greenhouse gas or carbon emissions was the top one cited there at 19% of responses. And then improves transit operations and access to transit, and reducing a gap in regional system, both at 12.7% response rate. The last question was open-ended. That it really touched on a lot of different topics. The full results are in the appendix as well, but it touched on topics from the pedestrian system, climate change, safety, speed on the regional system, accessibility and frequency of transit, and a number of other topics as well. So based on the survey, based on previous conversations when we went to the TAC in January, we presented an option for weighting. So the next 2 slides will just give a comparison of some of the weighting factor options with the starting place, and then I think I'll open it up for discussion from there. So on this, and this is covered in Appendix C, but on the slide right now, this is the first 5 pieces of the technical scoring criteria. So this column right here, or the first 2 columns, show what we used in the previous tip cycle. So in this case, the weighting factor was of 2 was given to safety or security, and then all the way 1 through 10, everything else received a 1. The option that we shared with the TAC was to boost safety to a 3, boost improves transit operations or access to transit to a 2, reduces a gap in the system to a 2. And then on the next slide, boost reduces greenhouse gas or carbon monoxide to 2 as well. So then based on our conversation there, they wanted us to share options with this group and have some deliberation with the policy committee. So one other scenario that we presented was similar to what we shared with the TAC, but just pulled back a little bit. So in this case, we left safety as a weight factor of 2 and then boosted the other 3 to a 1.5. So in terms of total possible points that you could receive on the technical score, then the previous cycle would have been 22 points. The option shared with the TAC initially would be 30, and then the scaled back version that we updated was a 25. That's a lot that I covered. So there's a lot of ways we can go, where we can go next, but essentially the action requested is to use the evaluation criteria language, and I could also discuss the options for the scoring criteria or weighting factors. And then if there's questions, definitely happy to do my best to answer those too. So
maybe we should, Chair, maybe we should take questions for a while because it's a lot of technical tables that we showed and a lot to understand at a first glance. So
I agree. Yeah, I'm happy to open it to questions, and thank you for the presentation and the attachments in the packet. It was all very helpful, and I myself love the 30 plus 20 in the 2 rankings adding up to 50 because that's a very easy. I think do I have that right? That like the highest possible score would be 50. So it would be something out of 50. It just has a lot of appeal to kind of the minimalist mathematical thinking. I'm able to.
It'll depend on which weighting factor you may choose, right? So the qualitative one will have a max of 20, but some scores will be coming like 16.
Mm-hmm.
That's the qualitative. The quantitative one, the max will be either 22 or 25 or 30, depending on what kind of weighting scheme you want to give those factors.
Understood.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Back on again.
Questions from others?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Cameron.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe for staff, safety is still the highest priority, right? 79% in the survey.
yeah, because 70, yeah, something like that.
But yet, when you look at we didn't change the weight factor to go up, but we changed other lower priorities factors to go up. So we addresses safety and security, stayed at 2 and 4. However, improves transit operations, gaps, and reduces greenhouse gas all went up as stronger weighted. Can you explain that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in the initial discussion or presentation we gave to the TAC, all 4 of them went up. And then
Is that a staff recommendation? Because I remember talking about this, in fact, it's in the notes that I said, hey, why are we even going to change the criteria?
yeah,
So that's what I need to know. Why did that, from the meeting, why did it go up?
yeah. It was largely tied to the survey responses. So that was the option we shared for discussion with the TAC. And then when we came up with other options, the scaled back one, I did notice that the safety did not go up in that case. So we did, in that case, only increase the other 3 that were ranked highly, but we're not as high as safety. So that's
But Commissioner,
So you shared safety up, right?
Yeah.
But the
Yes.
TAC brought it back down.
They didn't really comment directly on the criteria. The main gist of their feedback was that they wanted the policy committee to decide the weighting factors. So they felt like they could comment on the matrix, the language, but they wanted this group to zero in on the weighting factors and leave it up to the people.
yeah, that's what I wanted to say. So let's say specifically on on safety. You could leave it as a 2 as it was the last cycle. You could push it as a 3. The policy committee members, the TAC members thought that weighting, picking a weighting number was more of a policy decision. It's how strongly the region feels a factor is in during project selection or prioritization. And so they wanted that choice left to you, and that's why you see 3 different options. And you can modify an option. So for example, if you like the scale back option, but you thought, you know, I think safety should be a little higher, you can, instead of a 2, you can make it a 2.5, you can make it a 3. So this is really a policy decision of what kind of scaling you want to use on each one of these factors for the technicals.
Having new eyes on this, almost 80% said safety is their top concern. That weight didn't go up, but then greenhouse gases is less than 20%, and that does go up. Now, I don't want to get into a conversation about greenhouse gases, but I mean, it just doesn't make any sense that safety wasn't weighted more.
We can
after those
change it.
results.
Yeah, you
that's-
can change
That's
it.
what I'm trying to say. You can change
This is
it.
our decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
that,
staff is fine with anything you change. You
I think it's pretty.
tell us to change it and we'll change it.
yeah, and it also, just the comparison of percentages depends on how the question was asked. So the first question was a pick 3. So if you're picking your top 3, which one would deserve a bit higher? The second question was a yes or no. And then the third question was a pick 1. So that impacts what the share of any given selection would be.
Yeah, and just to, Madam Chair, if I may follow up, just to
Yeah, please.
clarify. That you're talking about the survey and how the questions were asked.
Yep.
It was not a scientific survey either. It was just
No.
published, we heard through the city of Salem, through here. So it wasn't like we called a sample size of.
No, yeah, that's, I think, a more involved effort to do sampling and,
Yeah.
yeah, it's, and I think you need a minimum of 400 plus surveys to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think what I'm seeing, and I hope I'm interpreting this correctly, is that the option shared with the TAC developed by staff really took into consideration the community comments we received in the survey about regional priorities in transportation planning. And the scaled back version, am I correct, staff, was developed in response to the tax question that, you know, or the tax preference that we have a discussion about it, or were they also presented with a scaled back version?
Yeah, the first, the way he said that the first time, so they were not presented the scaled back version.
Okay.
And we could have potentially presented you all with 5 options, but like Mike said.
10 would have been better.
And a survey of those 10.
Huh?
Survey says.
Well, I know that this group is familiar with my feelings about community engagement and incorporating community feedback into the work that we do. And I think that that is reflected in the options that staff developed to share with the TAC. And I appreciate the simplicity in understanding the way the weighting factors and max points possible work in that system. So I am comfortable with the option that was shared with TAC. But I hear other opinions. And I think it reflects kind of the comment about like, well, how come safety didn't go up in this scaled back option, but it, you know, climate did in the bottom. But you can see in that the options shared with TAC in your packet, or I don't know if Steve wants to bring it back up, but you can see that there is kind of like a commensurate increase for the other priorities indicated by community members. And then just, you know, kind of static numbers in the places where we didn't see a community emphasis on what we should plan for and how we should plan.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So, first of all, who's gonna make the decision on the Appendix C process here?
Well, this group can make this decision.
Once it's determined which.
Oh, I
scale,
see.
Which one's gonna happen, who are
Yeah.
the reviewers.
It's the technical advisory.
Right,
committee
it's
who
the
does
TAC.
scoring.
And did the TAC accept? I heard the argument that they said, this doesn't belong in our field because it is full of politics and policy. So I've been briefed on this too, by the way. So kind of know where I'm at already, but would the TAC have accepted the option that was shared with them?
I don't know how to answer that. Do you want?
Well, let's just say that in general, they didn't like
The
it.
answer is no. They
Yes.
were accepting.
Thank you.
of
That's
the-
all I have.
Criteria.
That's all I need.
Yeah.
And generally, they would not have accepted this. So.
Well, I think that's speculating myself.
Nope, I've
To
been
say
briefed.
that they would not have, when they feel that they are not policymakers or decision makers in a policy space. I think that's really setting a boundary based on their
Thanks, Madam
understanding.
Chair. I
of
think
the
we
law.
have a different opinion, different perspective. So again, the TAC is gonna make this determination based on what we put forward. It's really difficult for them to inject, community policy concerns into their decision-making, which is what this survey weighted process has added. Okay, so I want to make certain that we keep it as simple as we can. I'm not ignoring the community. Of course, that's my job as an elected to listen to that, any of us as electeds. But I want to make certain that the TAC has as clean a process as they possibly can. I don't want to add a bunch of extra factors to their work that takes them outside the realm of their daily work. So I come back to, why would we change from the current weighting factors that we're using? What's the advantage, in moving projects forward, in applications forward, and adding more burden to that weighting?
I'll take it. You want to take it, Jack?
I mean, I guess the short answer from just my perspective is that we ran a survey, we had some results, and so we wanted to reflect those results on the options that were presented.
Really for you to decide does the survey influence what you're thinking should be weighting factors for any of these weighting numbers for any of these factors, and like you said, the survey is not scientific, it's choices and dialogue, but we have a public participation process we give the public an opportunity to chime in, and then it's up to you to decide what you want to do with that input. So it all boils down to what you feel comfortable as a weighting factor for any of these, and of course, staff is open to any decision you make. And then these weighting factors will be applied to the technical scores. And I'll just say, it's just one part of the whole process of determining what gets selected for projects. And Steve's gonna go into this a little bit. There's a whole timeline where applications come in, scored, weights are applied, and then you kind of see the results, and then there's still some flexibility. If you think something came in its overall score was not, let's say, the top 5, but you think we really want to have that project done, then you can make that decision. This doesn't lock you in, but it gives you a process to say, oh, we went through this process, here's how things came out. Even so, we want to move the order around. So you might get that out, that this isn't the be all end all of how projects will be selected. It's just a tool for the process.
Yeah, that's a really good thing to underline, is it's a tool.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I want to recommend that we stay with I said it in the last meeting, we stay with the existing scoring sheet. And if we're going to do this, when would we do this again? 2 years?
3
Probably 3 years.
3 years?
3 or 4
We're
years.
going to do this again, and we're going to put any weight towards a survey that we do a scientific survey. Because I don't believe that people in Turner or Almsville probably got communicated or talked to about their thoughts on this survey. I like it that there's a survey done, but I think it needs to be a scientific survey before we put weight towards it. And that's what I said last meeting. And I think for our TAC to be able to evaluate these projects, we could just stay with the existing criteria. And we've we've taken it into consideration to take all things into consideration in the past when we've approved these projects. So I don't, Madam Chair, go ahead.
I just want to ask a clarifying question, because the first part that, there were some changes to the evaluation criteria language apart from the weighting factors. And I wanted to make sure that, the part that the TAC did recommend, I wanted to make sure that there was still, interest in that part.
So Steve, if you're clarifying, there's a couple of minor changes that you made to the language, right?
Mostly, yeah, they're pretty minor. I would say overall, there, as mentioned, there was a three-part system that was a little complicated, I thought, for the qualitative scoring. So I smashed those together into one matrix. And then there was some language changes to the scores, but it was within the way I approached it was just some language changes that helped me clarify what they meant, and hopefully we'll do the same for the folks who are scoring them. First, when we get to the scoring part, that's kind of when we find out is, that's when I get a lot of feedback about how it works or doesn't work.
If I may, Madam Chair, I'm looking at.
I believe Director Hinojos Pressy has been waiting for a moment with her hand raised,
Forgive
so
me.
I'd like to recognize her.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to input in that I do personally also feel very strongly that we utilize the scoring criteria that the TAC has recommended, because I mean, as we've also received in surveys and analysis that this body has gotten, that the COG has and the SKATS staff has worked really hard to put together, there is a significant issue in the fact that we are overseeing an entire Salem area metropolitan area. As former Chair Clark also stated, we are the second largest metropolitan area in Oregon, and yet we have the highest like fatality rates than a substantial number of cities, including New York and San Francisco. And I think it's really important that whenever we're creating our plans for bettering our community and making sure that we're investing in the right places, that we have that in mind. And that's why the weighting criteria came into place, where we are considering to make sure that kids can walk safely to school, and we are considering that folks are able to navigate the streets safely. And I think that that's why it's very important that we maintain the criteria that has been developed.
Mike?
Oh, yeah, I just was looking at these zip code responses, 0 from Turner. So I have to agree with Commissioner Cameron on, if we're gonna do a survey, let's do it the right way. This is just a bunch of really passionate people, and that's good. I want to hear from them too, a bunch of smart people, smarter than I am. And I think if we're gonna do it, then it represents the whole community. We better get some feedback from the whole community. That's really what I'd like to see. And I would just keep it the way it is, be quite frank with you, if I were gonna vote right now, but I promised myself I wasn't gonna say anything, because it's my first meeting. Can't help speaking up.
That's usually what happens.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I'll just note, just from a pure number standpoint, that when I look at the option shared with the TAC, I think we all agree that safety is the #1 priority, and you can get the most possible points and percentage of points under the option shared with the TAC. With 6 out of 30 possible points, that's 20%. And a project that advances safety strongly would get the strongest support that way. The weighting factors that have previously been used are, I think, 18% and 16% in the scale back option. I personally don't like to go out to the public and ask for their opinion if we're not going to put it to use. And you can ask Commissioner Pope if that's true in my past as a federal land manager. But I do really want to make sure that when we ask people, they see some result from that. But I agree that safety is the #1 priority. The other things that have been elevated here are, when I look at page 37 of the packet, they're the top 4 things that we heard from people about. So.
Thank you, Councilor Teigen. Mike?
Yeah, I just want to make sure staff is getting what it needs from this discussion so we can move forward. So it's really, in my mind, several parts. The first part is the language of how to score a project, which we work with the TAC and got the language tweaked a little bit. We as staff and the TAC thinks it's a better way to score things. That's one part. The weight is it's a separate one, which is more of a policy decision. So it's what staff is really asking is, could you approve the language used how we score a project, and then give us the right direction of which weights to use, whether it's the weights used in the last cycle, some other set of weights. If you don't like any option here, you can have a motion to say, I like this option, but I'd like to change that number to something else. Like you could say, I like the one used in the previous cycle, but change safety to 3 and change another one to 2. So you could tweak any of these things, but what staff is asking is let us use, if you agree, the new language for how projects are scored, and then your decision of whatever weights you feel is most appropriate, and you're having a good discussion about that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the best way to resolve it, whether you need more discussion, whether you're ready for a motion, or you need.
Could you point us to the page in the packet, or perhaps it's possible to bring back up the slide so that we can settle the question on the language adjustments, please?
Or, a moment. But it's,
I recall seeing it in the packet, but now I
Yeah.
can't seem to locate it. I'm just like back and forth between the pages.
so it's appendix, A and B
Mhm.
are the language,
Mm.
we're evaluating. So, and that starts on PDF page 32. And we did review this language, in the technical score has not changed until we reviewed in November. As I mentioned, changed a little bit since the last cycle. But we look at something like addresses safety, so it's primarily relying on our high injury network, and or improvements to safety for vulnerable road users. That's sort of the leading part for or piece to that criterion and how that's evaluated. For bottlenecks, it's related to projects on one or more of our congestion management corridors. Bottlenecks on those. For the transit operations, it's related to will the project improve transit operations or increase access to transit on a core network transit route versus a non-core network transit route, versus no impact or decrease. And then we'll go down, talks more about elimination of gaps in either sidewalk, bike lane, or other facilities, traffic control systems, eliminating gaps versus reducing gaps or not having an impact. The second page, you're starting with, criteria number 6 is improvement on the critical urban freight corridor versus improvement not on the critical urban freight corridor that address an impediment. Number 7 is a little broader, improves access to employment centers and jobs versus no impact or creating a barrier. Number 8 is likely to reduce greenhouse gas or climate emissions versus limited impact or likely to increase GHG or carbon monoxide emissions. And then number 9 relates to benefits or improvements to facilities in an environmental justice area or improvements of operations which directly versus no impact. And then the last one is upgrades to a seismically vulnerable bridge that's identified in the long range plan or improves something that's on the ODOT plan. That's kind of the high level of the technical score, and then as shown on the slide before, the qualitative score has changed a little bit since we saw at the November meeting. This group saw the 3-part version and this 1-part version with a couple minor tweaks to this.
And so I think at this point, we are looking for a motion and a vote from this body to approve this language.
So, Madam Chair, if I may, I think I'm okay with all the language that's in here, but I would suggest that we, on number 9, we keep the same language the way it goes through. Low income or minority populations or neighborhoods, instead of using the term environmental justice.
Well, let's see what everyone says and we can make the change.
Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
I think I second Kevin Cameron's statement. I feel like environmental justice actually makes the term kind of broad, and I was actually going to ask what is meant specifically by environmental justice area. But I guess, yeah, I don't want to split hairs over language, but I think benefits low income, or we could even change it to historically excluded populations or neighborhoods, just because I feel like that's more encompassing of, I'm thinking of, like our senior citizen community and like folks on really limited incomes. Yeah, I think it's a little bit more specific than just EJ.
I appreciate the comment. Thank you. Other thoughts?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
I'll just say for the last 4 years, many of these grants have pointed folks to the EPA's EJ screening tool, which is as of last week no longer available for people to use to determine whether or not projects are taking place in a EJ identified population area. So I would also second Commissioner Cameron's suggestion to use a different term.
Colin, other thoughts from the room? Sorry, I can't see raised hands. I also agree that the consistency in language could improve this measure. So with those changes incorporated, would we like to make a motion and approve this language, and then move on to the weighting discussion?
What's the motion? Well, I hadn't made a motion. I just,
I don't-
before I made a motion, I wanted to make sure we could agree to change that. But I would make a motion with those changes noted.
So we'll take out, if that's the motion, we'll take out EJ areas in that matrix on 9 and just put in low income or minority populations.
Or neighborhoods, yeah. Like just, yeah, perfect.
Or neighborhoods.
That would be my motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Thank you for offering such good language improvements, and providing consistency to this. I think we can call for a vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Okay, the motion passes unanimously. So now I think we can move on to a conversation that is focused on the weighting factors for the technical score. And I guess the weighting factors for the other score are not part of this. Am I right?
There aren't any weighting factors for the qualitative.
Oh, there aren't any weighting factors, of course. That makes sense why they're not part of it. Okay. So we've shared a lot of information and thoughts on this. And I don't know if we're ready to entertain a motion. I guess we could, or we could have further discussion on the matter if there are things that people think are unsaid.
Madam Chair, I'm ready to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I would move that the weighting factors used in previous SIP cycles remain.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, any discussion?
I'll just say from Salem's perspective, and I'll be honest, I'm 10 days into it. I do, like I said earlier, appreciate the weighted score increasing that on what we did hear from the folks who responded. I can't quite see the title of it up at top. If I was to make a suggestion, perhaps as a bit of a bid for compromise, I would look at the scaled back option, but increase the weight factor for number 1, addresses safety and security, to a 3, so that the max possible points there would be 6. I think that the scaled back option has a bit of compression, I think, between what's important. And among this room, and certainly the survey takers, the number 1 important thing was addressing safety and security. So if you increase the weight factor to 3, you would bump up the total number of points to 27, with 6 of those being possibly earned by safety, which I think is still quite a bit. So should be just over 20%, and would also, honor the responses that we got from folks. That'd be my point of discussion, though I won't offer it as an amendment just yet.
Thank you, Councillor Tigan. Director Hinojos-Pressy?
I think Councillor Tigan shared a lot of my thoughts. I would be amenable to compromising with what the TAC came back to us with, because I do feel like they provided some really good insight and recommendations and suggestions. And again, just really wanting to make sure that we're highlighting the fact that our roads, particularly turning left and turning on high injury network areas, have so many more deaths and injuries than even New York.
I would agree. I would not be able to support the motion that we are discussing, though I think the compromise motion that was presented by Councillor Tigan offers a good solution, and gives us the opportunity to be responsive to community feedback. And I too feel that it is part of my responsibility and service to this committee and to the community to take that feedback seriously. And I do also support a more scientific survey. I understand that there's cost implications of that for COG staff, which then factors into the budget that we are all sort of working within on this committee. But I think an opportunity to change this again in future years with a more scientific understanding of what our population thinks in a broader distribution throughout the region makes sense, but not doing anything right now and ignoring the time and input for people that took the time to give us their feedback doesn't feel right to me. So yeah, I don't know from here, Mike, if we offer a second motion, or
No.
if
Call
we
for the question.
Madam Chair, to the motion.
Yeah, you wanna,
Madam Chair, to the motion, if I may.
please.
We are recognizing the people's feedback and keeping the scores, safety still number 1, and that was their feedback. So I just wanted to make that clear. I'm not ignoring what people say to me. I'm ready.
so either there's a motions to amend the original motion that can happen, or the chair could just put the original motion to a vote. So Chair.
Let's just clarify what the motion is first.
Yeah.
That's on the floor right now.
My motion was to continue to use the matrix that we have used in cycles until we have an option for a more scientific survey and a process. Don't change it.
Which would not be until the next time.
Yeah.
Which is 3 or 4 years from now. Did staff clarify that for us earlier?
Yeah, 3 or more years from now, probably. So, I'm trying to follow Robert's rules. I am not an expert at Robert rules, but
Chair Carney,
Please.
Anna Henson, ODOT. I want to thank you for restating what the motion is before we vote. Councillor Tigan suggested upping the safety weight factor, are you suggesting, I should talk to you. Are you suggesting that the motion be amended? I know he didn't say that. I want to clarify, because I think there's a lot of information out there.
Yeah, let me clarify my suggestion and I can speak to it. I'm not offering an amended motion at this point. I just wanted
Okay.
to maintain the conversation. My suggestion would be to accept the third column on the right, the scaled back option, but increase the weight for safety from 2 to 3. Again, new guy. I read through the packet, and clearly there was some motivation to change the weighting, which is why the staff did the work, why we engaged the community. Now, if it actually turns out it's the majority opinion of the board that we shouldn't be changing the weighting community at all, I would wonder why you went through that process. But again, I don't know. I wasn't here. And so in the hopes of finding a compromise between whatever you decided to do in November and whatever we're deciding to do today, I would just suggest making safety even more important in column 3 and accepting the work of the TAC and your staff. That's all. That's the heart of my motion or my suggestion.
Any other questions? All right, do we want to put the motion on the floor to a vote? I guess that's our next.
Yeah, call the question.
Well, I'm not sure, Chair, is there a modification to the motion that Chair Keegan?
None has been proposed. I would propose a modification to the motion, and that would be to adjust the scaled back option with the first weighting criteria for safety and security, given a weight factor of 3 with a maximum points possible of 6, and then allow the other numbers to adjust incrementally as indicated.
I really need to be clear here. The motion's on the floor, and the person that moved it did not. That's what's on the floor before us right now. All these other great ideas are open for discussion if we want to make a different motion, but this motion's on the floor right now. And that's in your little book.
Yeah, but a member can rise and make an amendment to a motion before it's voted on, and then we would vote on the amendment to the main.
Amendment first, then the motion.
We vote on the amendment to the main motion. If that amendment passes, that
I'm not even
gets
clear what the
changed.
amendments really are after listening, except for
Yeah,
raising.
that's why I want some change.
Except for raising the safety
Yes.
weight higher.
I was trying to get
That's the
some
only
clarity.
thing I.
I'm trying to get some clarity whether there is an amendment to the main motion by someone, so we can potentially vote on that amendment to the main motion.
Now there is.
Okay.
There's no second yet. Oh, yes, just be a second.
So it's just increasing the weight of safety. That's the amendment.
Well,
No, it is accepting the scaled back option
Okay.
presented by
So we're
staff to
talking
the
about
policy
different
committee, but
options,
not
except-
considered by the technical advisory committee,
Okay.
with an increase in the weight on safety and security from 2 to 3.
I'm not sure that would be like, I mean, I guess the amendment, accepting the amendment is up to the body, but that feels like a different motion to me. Like,
It is.
yeah.
Totally different.
It could be. I was a little confused at the amendment to the motion myself, not being an expert in Robert's rules, though maybe I should quickly become one.
Totally gets rid of his motion.
Well, that's what I'm trying to clarify. If it's an amendment to the motion, or is it so different that it shouldn't be treated as an amendment to the original motion? And I can use some help because I'm not an expert on this.
I mean, I think that we should move forward with like the vote on this current motion, and if it were to fail, then we could always bring in a different motion.
Okay, then we will call the question. All in favor of maintaining the weighting factors used in previous MTIP cycle? Please indicate by saying aye.
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 So
And-
raise a hand so we get a recording. So we have versus from Keizer, Marion County, Turner, ODOT, and Polk County. And anyone online voted aye? No.
And those opposed?
Aye.
Same sign. Aye.
Aye.
So motion passes. Did I get the count right, Mike?
Yeah, it passed 5-3.
Okay,
And then the- Everyone.
so
Thank you.
sorry, I'm scrolling through my packet to get to our next agenda item, which
Do you want to
is,
go over the
Yeah.
timeline? Because I think the timeline is pretty important for the whole community to know that, like I said earlier, this the whole scoring thing is one part of your process.
Yeah, so
just
the last page of the memo just has a brief outline of what comes next. So March is, well, first we'll have the applications are due at the end of February. March is when the tackle, do the scoring, both we're gonna aim to do both the technical and the qualitative scores in March. Staff will add those together, to determine that initial ranking. We'll give you an update likely at the March meeting on progress. And then, the list of, the rankings and, the results will be posted for public comment. Also in April, we'll be discussing our regional programs, which are things like, funding levels for the, traffic control center, safe routes to school, transportation options program, as well as funding for the MTO. And that's an important discussion because those projects could potentially pull from the same pool of project applications of funding. Then we'll, while that's going on, we're also gonna have ODOT scope some of the highest scoring, some of the ODOT engineering staff scope and help us with cost estimates for some of the highest scoring projects. And then applicants will have a chance to make some tweaks or changes depending on what the scoping feedback is from the engineering staff. And in May, well, probably April and May, staff will be working on sort of our initial programming options. So what funds we can, or what projects we can fund and at what levels. And we'll provide some options to the technical advisory committee in June. And then that'll work its way to the policy committee this summer for review and approval.
And I just want to point out, if you don't mind, Steve, that
Yeah, go for it.
if you look at this timeline, which is on page 4 of the memo, there are bullet points that say update to policy committee in March and in May, and then in July. During each step of this process where we are going to be with your TAC, scoring things, we'll give you an update. What do the scores look like? And then when we go out to the public for the initial public, early public involvement, come back with public comments shared with the committees. We'll look at the programming, how can we program various things based on their cost, and we have financial constraint we have to maintain for all our funds. We'll kind of show you how that may look, and then we'll get some feedback and update to the policy committee. And then before we even develop the final draft, we're going to come to you. I'm sorry, we're going to come to you with a draft and say, this is how things are working out based on all the steps we've done to date. Is there any other changes you want? So trying to make sure that you understand that even though we have this very technical process, trying to use this as a tool, this is this policy committee's decisions about what projects get funded. So you have plenty of input during this process. And of course, if you have questions outside of the meetings, we can take those as staff as well. So we want to make sure that you are comfortable with this process. We're getting the feedback from this committee about how it's going. And that's always been the discussion in all prior cycles. Also, we want to make sure that they have the adequate amount of control about what projects are being selected for this team.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that brings us to our next agenda item, which is item G, the draft Salem-Keizer Area Transportation Study Fiscal Year 2025-26 Unified Planning Work Program.
Yeah, and I have to share my screen. Oh, can someone allow me to share? Desiree? Yeah, are you doing that?
Yep, there you go.
Showing up yet? Good. Okay, so this is the fiscal year 25-26 Unified Planning Work Program. For those, just need to say today's action is just to provide feedback on the draft version of the UPWP. Not a perfect version. There's some corrections we have to make. There's a whole review process that goes through ODOT and Federal Highway. And so this is just one step. We're going to bring the revised UPWP back in March and April after we get a lot of review for adoption. So this is more comments and feedback on the draft UPWP. With that being said, what is a UPWP? It describes the federally funded and regional transportation planning activities within the MPO area. Part of the 3C process of continuing cooperative and comprehensive planning that needs to go on inside MPOs. This document is required by federal regulations. As I just mentioned, it's going to be reviewed by ODOT, Federal Highway, and Federal Transit staff. We have to respond to those comments they send us. Finally, as I said, it's going to be adopted by the Policy Committee in March and April. And this work program serves as the work we do for that year, starting in July, as the IGA, the intergovernmental agreement with ODOT for the work we do and for the funds we need to do that work. So that's a brief background about that. So what's inside the work program? Well, there's lots of things inside the work program. It's a long document, but I kind of broke it into these kind of smaller groups. There are all sorts of activities that are continuing, cooperative, and comprehensive. So it's policy committee and TAC meetings like these. It's outside meetings with OMPA, which is the other MPOs in the state and elected officials who talk about shared issues. There are the works to do the TIP amendments that Steve did earlier. There's sometimes with our funds, but it's sometimes ODOT projects and transit projects. It's public participation we do for all our documents. It's the consultation with outside agencies. It's for those new to us, we have a travel model that we use for planning studies, and the care and feeding of those models takes time. A lot of data goes into that. And we're on the cusp of developing a new model. It's called an activity-based model, as described in the document. So that'll get started. This already has started this year. It'll continue next year. There's a lot of data that we have for both our model, but also supplying it for studies. So we have land use and travel forecasts. We go down to 2050, required by federal regulations. We do safety planning. We do a lot of assistance to local planning studies. So when the local jurisdictions doing a corridor study, we provide them output from the model, land use, travel, or other data that we collect. We also monitor the regional systems. We do things about travel on the regional system and where the corridors are delayed. We do inventories of which streets have sidewalks and bike lanes and which don't, et cetera, et cetera. Then there's just the regular program management, organizing the program with budgets and agreements and invoices, hiring and training. There is we have a Safe Routes to School program that we run through the COG. So there's a lot of management of that. And then despite all our good work, Federal Highway and Federal Transit reviews us every 4 years, and they have either corrective actions or recommendations to make. Looks like when we are just about to finish and present to you in a month or so, we got a very high rating, but there's still lots of things they want to make better and closer to the regulations. In addition to all those continuing activities that happen just about every year, we develop products on a periodic basis. So we are developing the next tip, which is what we just talked about with Steve, the next series of projects we're going to fund. Then we're going to start the initial work for our long-range plan that goes out to 2050, or might go to 51 or 52. We'll see. But that gets started next year. It's a long-range plan that's required of NPOs. We won't adopt that until May 2027. I think I made a mistake in here. I think the tip is adopted May 26th. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah, May
Yeah,
26th.
sorry, that first bullet's wrong. It should be May 26th. And then we have other plans we have to update periodically. Our public participation plan, we adopted in 2021. So it's time for that to be updated. And same for our consultation plan. When you're an MPO, you have lots of plans that are required. So if you're new to this, you have to know that. Then there's some significant regional projects that are being done in the area. We have to say that they're going on. And even though we're not the lead in two of them, we want our policy committee to know about them and ask questions of the lead. So one is the 22 and 51 interchange recorder station loadout's doing, and we'll get updates about that. And then there's the Center Street Bridge seismic update, which is a very important project, obviously, to the region. And Anna, can you just chime in about the PC changes? It's not reflected in the work program.
Yes, thank you. We're accelerating that project to go to construction in 2026. So that means the first phase, which would be retrofitting the river span, the center span, and the east ramps. That's the plan right now. And the reason it is been updated is because we were able to secure some funding for that work. So that's good news.
So that's what I meant earlier. There's some tweaks we'll have to make based on better information. And for these regional projects, we'll provide SKATS and MWAC as appropriate progress updates on how those projects are going to the members of this body. And then our work program also covers public transit. So on the screen are some of the work that public transit is going to do, their comprehensive operational analysis, a service enhancement plan, and then work on a South Salem Transit Center, which is well on its way. They have the site, they're buying right away, they're trying to look for money for construction. Excuse me, and then they want to get started to work on a planning process for East Salem Transit Center. And there's actually more in their section that they're working on, but I just wanted to give you some of the most noteworthy projects. So that's a quick overview, because last topic I knew would take quite a long time. Is there any feedback anyone wants to make about the planning work program before we send it out to the federal agencies? We'll do a little cleanup before we send it out, but then we'll send it to the federal agencies and hold out for their comments. So back to you.
Any questions or discussion for staff on the updates to the Unified Planning Work Program? And then, Mike, you referenced the other documents that I believe are part of this, but maybe they hang separately. And that was the public participation plan. That's part of our bigger regional transportation plan. Yeah, not this. This is.
We do
every
those.
year we update
Yeah.
this.
So like our public participation plan is a separate plan that we update. We bring to the policy committee for their review, feedback, changes. And then we follow that participation plan when we're doing other plans. So like the TIP, we have a whole section about how we're going to involve the public on the update of the TIP or updated long range plan. So it's our document of how we're going to involve the public with surveys, with going outreach to neighborhood associations, social media, et cetera, et cetera. And what's the schedule of that?
It needs to be adopted by November
November
of this year.
Okay,
So it will be, you'll be beginning to see some of the beginning of the update. We'll be doing some outreach in the spring, starting in March. And then there'll be a draft document that comes to the policy committee, probably in July, thinking off the top of my head, July, August, because we have a 45-day public comment period that's required for that document and should be updated by November.
I have a couple questions. I'm really grateful that Turner's sitting here at the table. I see potential huge benefits for being involved in this, believe me. But my question, I have a follow-up though, but how did Turner and Unseld get into this in the first place? How did that happen?
You got time for lunch?
Okay, all right. But then, with the new administration, your plans have been largely approved in Washington DC. Do you see that continuing or that?
Well,
They can go through and assess everything again, probably a lot.
you know, all the regulation, all the process we follow is based on statute and then regulations that follow on the statute. Now, I suppose the administration can push against that and say, you know, stop doing that. They can say that to the federal agencies. Don't push it anymore. So it's a hard question to answer.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at the answer. Thank you.
There is a danger that they could pull the funding from it. So that's something we're just kind of hearing hints about even today.
Right.
You know, there's something called the Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations, and they're trying to figure out what this new order, executive orders and follow-up memos mean as far as to MPOs specifically. So we're going to carry on based on what the regulations say we should do in our work program. And then if things change, we'll obviously try to figure out what that is internally, and then the federal highway, and then you, of course, well.
Are those regulations, are those administrative or those statute, or are they both? Federal administrative or the statute or both?
Well,
You need an act of Congress to change those.
yeah, there's a statute. Yeah, there's statutes, US code, right? And then there are federal regulations on the Federal Register, and that gets updated every so many years based on changes to statute. So, and actually we were expecting some changes to the federal regulations in 2024, and it kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. So at this point, I'm not sure what's going to happen in this administration, whether they're going to publish any update to the federal regulation. So at the moment, we're working on what's existing now.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Okay, any further discussion? Just scroll up out of my document here. Do we have a motion do we need a motion, or do we just provide feedback to you and say, send it on to ODOT and Federal Highway?
Yeah, I don't necessarily need a motion, but I think the latter, like, also need to be okay if we just make a few tweaks and then send it off to Federal Highway and ODOT comments, and we'll bring it back. And we'll tell you whatever changes we had to make to the document. Good.
Sure, and can you move to the slide that shows when we see this again next?
It's actually, it's on the screen, in the bottom here. Revised draft policy committee. We'll see it in March or April.
Okay.
Depending on how quickly that process goes for their reviews.
Very good.
Probably more likely in April, I think.
So I'm trying to navigate around in this document and it doesn't like to let me to. So I believe that brings us, unless there is further discussion on this item in the Unified Planning Work Program, to item I, which is the summary of the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program modification.
Actually, Chair, we have an item H just to briefly go over.
Oh, it's not in my list here on the left hand. The index is giving me trouble in the PDF this
All right,
time.
it's
so I
there's no
apologize.
attachment. It's just an item on the agenda sheet.
Okay. And that is, let me scroll up and find it.
Yeah, I can jump into it if you're looking
Yeah,
for
that
it.
would be fine.
Yeah, it's our update on the federal fiscal year 2024 annual obligation report. This is a requirement that the MPO publicly lists the federal transportation funding that was obligated, which just means the federal government's promise to pay back funding that was spent on transportation projects. This particular report goes from October 1st of 2023 through September 30, 2024. And it's just an overview of what took place, a snapshot of what obligated in the Salem-Keizer area. A total of $71 million were obligated on a number of different projects in our area. You can see the breakdown in this table. But in this case, there were 19 projects for federal fiscal year 2024 that had some sort of obligation activity. Total was $71 million. I'll just highlight a couple of things, which is we also report out on our SKATS obligation rate, which is important for us to receive redistribution funds. So we have some targets that we've agreed upon with ODOT. We, for the region, obligated 95% of the funds that were scheduled to go in for obligation in federal fiscal year 2024. So that's really good. It keeps us, we could be able to get redistribution again I think it happens end of August or early September of this year. So just wanted to highlight that. And then at the end of the report is just a breakdown of the projects organized by jurisdiction. So really this year was a more funding obligated than typical, but it was largely due to the I-5 widening project from Kugler to Delaney. So the numbers tend to fluctuate a lot just depending on what projects are going on. So that's all I have.
I don't know that it is like substantive to our conversation, but I believe this item is missing from the online packet that was posted.
Yeah, so we just put a link on the agenda page. So yeah, sorry for that. We thought we would cut down on the packet
I see.
materials, but there is a link. I put it in the chat as, oh, actually I didn't hit send. I'll hit send now, but it's on the agenda cover page, but
Understood.
yeah.
Okay. Any questions or discussion on item H? Okay, then now I believe we can move on to item I, which is the summary of MTIP modifications.
Okay, so there was only one since November, and it's will be familiar. It's the Walton area charging up project. So this was the EV charging project that we approved to add to our TIP in a couple of weeks ago this month. So right now, this is one of the discretionary funding programs that are on pause. So my communication with Walton is that they're waiting to see what happens, and it's in the TIP and in the STIP. So if it moves forward, it'll be there. And if not, I think they'll make their adjustments. So next month I'll have more modifications to report on.
All right, and I believe that concludes all of our agenda items. So we are in a position to adjourn this meeting, if I'm not mistaken.
No, sorry, Chair. We have a section called information items.
Okay.
Happy to go over, but I'll be quick. I don't know if the meeting's been touched by long.
Sure, please do.
Just a reminder, our next policy committee meeting will be February 25th. Next CAC meeting will be February 11th. We have the OMPOC meeting. OMPOC is the Oregon Metropolitan Planning Organization. So we have 8 MPOs in the state, and we meet quarterly. In general, we used to meet in person, and now we're meeting online. And we have an agenda. The meeting is actually this Friday, and usually the chair and or the vice chair or someone from transit attends. So since we have a new chair, I would be looking to see who, whether Sadie wants to attend the on-clock meeting this Friday, or if anyone else could attend. So we have some representation from Scouts.
I unfortunately am leading a statewide advisory committee meeting that morning from 9 a.m. to noon. I may be able to attend a portion of the meeting after that. But I think we'll have to look to Lyle.
Yeah.
And I can check with Sarah Duncan. I know her time is fairly prescribed these days, but perhaps she would like to attend as my alternate for transit if she's available.
You could, that'd be fun if you could, do you want me to reach out to her, or will you reach out to her?
I can.
Okay. And just to kind of let you know, and I put in the packet, one thing that the OMPOC's reviewing is something they started earlier, a couple months ago in mid-2024, which was their legislative priorities. So this is a discussion between MPOs of what's important to MPO areas as far as the legislative session. I have to grab it in front of me. Did I attach it? I thought I attached it. Is it in the packet? The legislative priorities?
I didn't see it.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, that's an oversight. I can send it out later, but it's something that, as I mentioned, the OMPOC group discussed in an earlier meeting and just wanted to look at it again at this meeting. I'm sorry, it's not in the packet, but it's, I'm happy to send it out, and they're going to discuss it at the meeting. It's just commonalities they have and what they'd like to see for the next transportation bill, the 2025 session. So my apologies. Then there's just that table at the bottom, just a little tiny updates. As you know, we're accepting the applications until February 25th for the TIP. Your staffs are working on those applications now. And our Safe Routes to School program is going very well. We had school safety classes at several schools in the fall. We are having some in the winter. We just finished Chavez Elementary School, and we're moving on to other schools. And we had a donation from the Salem Bicycle Club, $2,200. That money is being used to provide vouchers to students completing our bicycle safety classes. Those vouchers are taken to the Bike Hub, which is here in North Salem, and they can use it to go toward bikes or helmets or other equipment, lights, etc. So a lot of appreciation for Salem Bicycle Club for doing that. And then we're also, in addition to safety classes, we're doing activities like walking school buses. So I think some of them happened recently.
Did you say walking?
Walking school
Walking
buses.
school bus.
But this way, we meet, there's an elementary school, we meet at some location, let's say 1/4 mile from the school, before school, and we meet there as a group and they walk to school. This is a safe way to say, hey, why don't you, let's all walk to school this morning. We've done that, we did that a lot last year, we're doing it again this year.
Yeah, teaching them to look both ways. I mean,
Yeah.
this morning I was turning right someplace. Let's see, Liberty to State. And this lady, I mean, I'm watching, but this lady just walks out, does not look. Right? And I'm going, you gotta be kidding me. Pedestrians have to be aware.
You gotta be on the swivel.
Yeah.
So
like-
did you see the video of Beth in her chicken outfit?
Yeah.
Yeah, Beth Schmidt for Safe Routes to School. She has a chicken outfit on how does a chicken cross the road? And she crosses the road with the crossing guards.
That's great.
So look at the website. She came to Whitaker Middle School and I got to walk with her doing that. It was a blast, but it gets everybody's attention because the chicken is crossing the road.
I mean, I don't trust Mike driving his truck, you know, when I'm crossing.
I got a great driving.
But educating kids like that at a very young age, I don't know, but I mean, I don't know what happened. So
Stop doing this.
Well, right, people are on their phones, they've had earbuds in,
Just so many distractions, both ways, driver and.
Yes, for sure.
We want safe drivers, we want safe pedestrians, we want safe bicyclists. And that's why
Yeah.
we're trying to catch these kids early.
Yeah, it's great.
So that was fun.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
And
Michelle
if you
does-
want to go on a walking school bus, let us know and we'll let you know when the next one is.
Yeah, I would.
Okay. Okay, that's it, Chair. Finished.
All right, thank you, Mike. Sorry for overlooking your final agenda item. That's an important one for me every month. So thank you for calling my attention back to that. All right, it is 1:58 p.m. and I believe our meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, everyone.
For your next meeting.
I know, 2 minutes to the next meeting.